Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. I have got another head-to-head battle for you for week 9 on DraftKings. I'm going to take my friend Joe Holka into the cage with me, and we're going to duke it out here for 25 gifted subs on our Twitch channel. If he wins, I will go to his channel and gift 25 subs when he's live. If I win, and I am 4-2 in cage matches so far this year, he will gift 25 subs to the Smiz gang live on Twitch, one of the times that I'm live 6 days a week during NFL season. Welcome once again to the head-to-head battle. We're going to use this kind of like a head-to-head game. Obviously, we're just playing a 1v1 matchup here, but usually when you play head-to-head games on DraftKings, you get a lot of overlap for good reason. The value plays that are very popular are probably going to match up from player to player. The super stud plays that have a really high floor and access to a really high ceiling are also going to be the same. And what you end up with is like 2 versus 2, or maybe a 3 versus 3 in the people that you're playing with, instead of a full lineup of 9 versus 9. So that's what we have here. We're going to draft this in a snake draft. First pick, second and 2, then everybody picks 1 1 1 1 1 the rest of the way. And I let my opponent always choose whether they want to be the first and 1 or the second and 2. Joe has chosen to be second 2, giving me the number 1 pick overall. And we're going to go and draft that head-to-head. So I want to bring in Joe. Joe, how you doing, man?
What's going on, Al? I've watched you do a couple of these. I didn't realize that you had such a great record. Originally, you said that you go value typically in the beginning, and I was kind of considering going the opposite approach. So maybe I'm already starting out kind of behind the 8 ball here.
I mean, I may be going value. I may not. Some of this could be subterfuge. You never know.
Well,
I go with what I think. I go with what I believe is the most rare asset on the slate, usually. Because typically everybody wants second and 2. I think I've picked second and 2 once. So everybody like sticks me with 1, and then they pick then they pick second and 2, because I guess that's probably a little bit more optimal, right? It's like, okay, I get the 2 guys that I want, and then you watch him go. So I think that I try to take the guy off the slate that's the least replicable, right?
I think that's fair. It's nice of you to give your guest the more probably optimal approach here, but it hasn't really affected you too much. So hopefully I can kind of at least chip away here for the guest.
The rope-a-dope. I got to bob and weave, you know, you got to stick and move. You got to do all the things. I got to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. And in order to do that, that means that I have the first pick, and I want to take the guy that I think, in my opinion, is going to have the toughest chance for anybody to replicate on this slate. Now, there's obviously some value or some high dollar guys at running back, McCaffrey, Cook. There's some guys in the mid-range that are interesting as well. There's some wide receivers at the top that are really, really good, and every single person has been priced up on this slate. I think that I want to go with somebody that's going to get me a lot of volume here. And while I typically go value early, there's somebody that I want to stick with here that may not be a value play, but I think he's a value based on the prices that everybody else is at. And that's going to be Nick Chubb going to Denver. I don't typically take running backs that are on the road. I don't typically take running backs that are not favored, but I feel like I need to get volume in this spot. Now, this could come back to bite me, as it's a little bit different from what I've done before. But I think this mid-range at running back is going to be overlooked a little bit with the guys that are sitting at the high price range and what it's going to restrict you to doing later on. I'm going with Nick Chubb here. I love the volume that he's getting in wins and in losses, against good defenses, against bad defenses, on the road or at home. It does not matter. He's getting his 20 touches, and he's extremely explosive. 6.6 yards per carry, 6.1 yards per carry, 5.4 and 8.3 at San Fran, at Baltimore, at New England. Now he gets Denver. Pretty good defense, not a great defense. I love the volume. I want to stick Nick Chubb into this lineup. I think that he's going to bounce back with the usage in the passing game. 7,300 is good enough for me.
I like that. I actually had him kind of as like a contrarian option last week, just someone that was seeing a ton of volume in a tougher matchup. But yeah, I think at 7,200, he's still, I mean, can you look at him as like a value even at that point relative to kind of his usage, 7,300? I'm sorry. I think that he's totally fine. But you're starting off a little different route, so I'm a little bit thrown off here. But are you ready for my 2 picks? I think
I'm ready. Go for it.
So I wouldn't be on brand. And I think a lot of people in the chat have already said this, if I wasn't kind of jamming in some expensive running backs. I almost went Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook, but I'm a little nervous, like I said earlier before we kind of went live on recording this video, that the value is not great. So I'm going to go halfway. I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey at 10K as my first choice, staying on brand since, midsummer with that one. But Aaron Jones at 7K for my second one. One thing that I do really like about Jones this week is the Chargers are actually the second worst team in the league at defending running backs in the passing game. So that's one of the things that I'm kind of closely keeping an eye on. So I think Aaron Jones at 7K. I know that a lot of people will just look to this big explosion that he just had, but he seems like still a fantastic value. You mentioned the volume for Chubb, but I'm in on Aaron Jones. So I'll go with McCaffrey and Jones to start out.
So I love Aaron Jones. You know that I have a ton of him in best ball leagues this year, and I like him this week a lot. My issue is only the volume, right? When it came down to him or Chubb, because I knew I was going to get the first pick because everybody just gives me the first pick in this one because they want the second and two. It came down to this. Aaron Jones is essentially in a 55-45 timeshare with him and Williams. And while I think he's a great play, especially with the amount of volume that he's seen in the passing game, right? They said that they were going to utilize their running backs a ton more, and they have, which is great for floor on DraftKings. There's just that 70 touch thing that I want to have all the time, right? I want to get those 70 touches. I feel like I can get there with the running backs that I feel are going to be on the table for me on this slate. Aaron Jones is a great play this week, guys. I'm definitely not poo-pooing the Aaron Jones play. And I believe that on a couple of the projection systems that I've looked at, some have Aaron Jones is the better value at the price, and some have Nick Chubb at the better value at the price. For me, I always lean towards the guy who gets a little bit more predictable volume. But Aaron Jones is an absolutely fine play. One thing I did miss out on, Joe, I did not have you tell everybody where they can find your information. So why don't you talk to YouTube, let them know about where they can find all of the content that you put out a week, because Joe puts out a ton of it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I'm actually on the majority of the platforms that you're heavy on too, Al. So Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, just search my name, Joe Holka. You'll find me. The majority of my content throughout the week does go up on YouTube and Instagram. And then I'm actually streaming live on Twitch right before you on Sundays now. So 11:30 Eastern time. If most of you guys could jump over for Al pre-lock. Start a little bit earlier on my stream, and then I'll kick you guys to Al as soon as he goes live. So that's pretty much it. Twitter as well. I don't spend as much time on Twitter as probably a lot of the guys in our industry, but basically just trying to be multi-platform, but it's all Joe Holka, so you'll find me.
Now, people are going to see this little placard here, and they're going to say, oh my God, Smizz, don't take a defense now. Don't worry, I'm not taking a defense now. Trying to show you something. Green Bay's running backs absolutely tore up the Chiefs. Denver, not so much. Maybe surprisingly, maybe not. 192 rushing yards allowed against Houston. 180 rushing yards allowed against Indy. 186 rushing yards allowed against Detroit. 203 against Baltimore. 129 against Oakland. Seems like a good place to attack. And considering that Christian McCaffrey's off the board, I'm going to take the next highest volume running back at 500 less. Give me Dalvin Cook. I'm going to have Joe's girlfriend cheering for my team to win this weekend, as Dalvin's going to be doing his thing here. Give me Dalvin, 95. I think that I'm well on my way to my 70 touches at running back. The possibility of maybe 50 out of this combination, both involved in the passing game, both getting a ton of the market share of their team's rushes and the goal line work and the passing game work. Both are on the road. I agree. There is a little bit of trepidation here. There's a little bit of scariness, but I'm going to start off with Cook and Chubb, and I'm going to let Joe kind of figure out where he goes next.
I like it, man. And for the record, I've watched a lot of Vikings games, which is not the best, especially earlier in the year when they weren't throwing much. But I got to basically watch a week where I didn't have Dalvin Cook. I think I ended up playing McCaffrey and Fournette, something like that. But then that was the week where Darren Waller just went absolutely crazy as well.
Like 35 points.
Yeah, I got a soft spot in my heart for Dalvin Cook, except the week where they just gave Alexander Mattison all those touches. So we're still kind of friends off for a little bit. So I'm glad you took him and I didn't have to. He is an amazing play.
Would you have gone 10K, 7K, 9,500 if I left Dalvin out there for you?
I would have thought about it, but I don't know if I could have made it work. Honestly, I would have had to basically go Stoneman. I would have had to play like Fitzpatrick at quarterback or something like that.
Yeah, you'd have had to find one of the 4Ks.
That's typically my style though in these small fields. Like I'd rather just get really weird at wide receiver position with a lot more variance anyway. Tight end, something like that. So I would have considered it, but I thought you would take a kind of a value play next. So I'm kind of a little bit.
You haven't taken one off the board, so they're still all there. So I kind of checked it back to you.
All right, so I might not go all the way down, but I need to get some savings to feel a little bit more secure here. So at the tight end position, Noah Fant, he's someone that I've talked about even earlier in the year as a tight end that runs a ton of routes. We know that he's one of those guys that is kind of a spark freak as well. His comp on player profiler is George Kittle. So I think that he's still someone that he's rookie tight end. These guys take time to develop. But now that there's no Emmanuel Sanders there, I think that the target share opens up a little bit for Fant. He was already running routes before that. He 8 targets last week. So at 3K, I think he's a great value. I almost always pay all the way down at tight end or all the way up. Don't have a ton of salary to work with those 2 running backs that I've started with. So I want to give myself a little bit more flexibility. So I'm going to go Fant.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Noah Fant, you needed a minimum salary or a lower salaried tight end to fit in there. I don't think you're going to go 2 tight ends, so that gives me a position that I can wait on. You've started with McCaffrey, Jones, and Fant. I'm going to look to wide receiver and see where I can find some value in here. And for me, I want value with volume. And Jarvis Landry at 4,500, I'm going to be Browns heavy, I guess. If I go this route, right? 10 targets that week, 10 targets against Baltimore in week 4. We need to find guys that can do it for us on volume alone. Now we can definitely get there with him if he gets those 10 targets. 0 touchdowns on the year. Denver is definitely a tough defense. Do I want to go this route though, when I've already got one Browns player in the lineup? You know?
It might be aggressive on the road, but
it might be a little bit aggressive.
Really well. Yeah,
but he is a solid value play. I think there's a couple others in here as well. What I can do is come up just a little bit. And by the way, if we run out of salary, if we don't plan, Joe's already got his thing already mapped out for sure, right? But if we do run out of salary and we don't have enough, the other player gets to take somebody off of our team and replace them with whoever they want on our team.
Oh, nice. Okay, good to know.
So, like, if I run out of value, you can say, you know what? Dalvin Cook's gone for you, and now you've got this 3K guy who's injured and never going to play. So you can tank the other person's team. So Landry, I think, is a really good value this week, but Sammy Watkins is also a pretty good value and just a little bit more expensive, getting the most targets of any of the wide receivers in the 4 to 5K range for Kansas City, running a lot of short routes, which is where Minnesota is the most viable to be attacked, and it's how Matt Moore is throwing the ball since he took over. They're not just trying to plug him in to the same role that Mahomes played. They've definitely changed their offense to suit the new quarterback, and if Moore starts again this weekend, Sammy Watkins at 4,900 I think is a very good play, and I get the bring back with Dalvin Cook. So I'm going to go there to find a little bit of value, leave me with 4,700 remaining per player. Joe, sending it back to you.
I like that quite a bit. I was kind of going back and forth in that mid 4K range as well, right, wide receiver. And I'm actually going to keep going with the Carolina train here. I think that Curtis Samuel at 4,300 is pretty underpriced relative to his kind of air yards and target share. Like one of the metrics that I talk about this on my stream all the time, but one of the metrics that I'm almost always looking at wide receiver is weighted opportunity rating. It's one of those free kind of air yards target share metrics at airyards.com. It's free. So it's literally, he's top 10 over the last 4 weeks. 4 weeks is kind of that optimal sample for that sort of thing. So he's the one that stands out as the guy that gets drastically underpriced. I know I already have Christian McCaffrey, but I think both these guys have kind of a more unique role that they're probably still okay on the same lineup, even if I don't end up going with their quarterback. I think the matchup for Samuel as far as Tennessee and their cornerbacks should be totally fine. They've got a couple injuries there as well. So Curtis Samuel 4,300. I'm going to keep working at Carolina, I think.
So you're just going to take every Carolina Panther?
All of them. Give me
every single one. Take all of them.
DJ Moore also underpriced. I'll take him too.
He is. No, he's another one that's cheap.
Yeah.
Like for me, the issue now is becoming where do I look for value? Because again, dealing with the couple of players, right? I don't know if I definitely want to stack guys from the same team a lot in a head-to-head format, but I think that there's a couple of guys that are just too cheap versus versus the volume that they're getting and what they're doing. And Preston Williams has had really good volume and squaring off against a team that has had trouble dealing with opposing wide receivers in the New York Jets are somebody that we can attack. Now, do I want to have a lot of shares of the Miami Dolphins? Probably not. Across my tournament allocations, or definitely not in head-to-heads, but volume is king, and volume at price is even more important, and salary is super important this week because of how expensive things are. So I'm going to take Preston Williams in his volume at the value price of 4,200 and plug him in and see what else I can do with this lineup, as now I'm up to 4,800 remaining per player.
Yeah, this is making me nervous. I'm like, normally you have like a couple guys, like some low hanging fruit down in like the mid 3K at a wide receiver or something like that. This is tough. I like the Preston Williams call. He's almost someone that I'm always picking him for the most part over a guy like DeVante Parker. The air yards are better. I know Parker didn't get in the end zone last week, but he's been kind of a touchdown dependent asset this year. But he has 8 targets, 10 targets over the last 2 weeks, actually a little bit more than I thought for DeVante. So that's an interesting one that we don't have like this like really cheap play that I'm kind of working my way through. So that's tough. So I think I need to kind of stay in this mid range a little bit. I consider Jarvis Landry. He was one of the ones that I thought was a little bit underpriced as well. But I'm going to give myself, since you've already done this with one of yours, I'm going to give myself a bring back. This is a guy that I've been, I guess, had a love-hate relationship with, but I played him 2 weeks in a row and he hasn't gotten there. Mike Williams, 4,600. He still projects out to be one of those guys that has regression coming. I do have Aaron Jones, so giving me a little bit of a bring back in that game. I'm still going to need to find a cheaper asset at some point, but Mike Williams still popping and kind of everything that I value. So
I'm very upset at you right now for taking Mike Williams.
Was that your next guy?
He
scares me, man. I feel like he's the guy that like he's the Kelvin Benjamin that he hits all these air yards and he never quite gets there. I don't know. It makes me nervous. He's a great play. I mean, I played him on my main team at 1,500, I think 2 weeks in a row, but still scares me a little bit.
To me, it's the touchdown regression that should be coming his way based on as many red zone and end zone targets as he gets, as well as the air yards. I've always said, never bow at the altar of just one statistic, but when you have every one of these different metrics pointing to the fact that he is going to regress towards the mean, and for him, that means in a positive manner because he has had all this usage and no touchdowns. Green Bay is a little bit of a tough defense on the outside. Their cornerbacks are very good, but if they keep using Mike Williams in the way that Mike Williams has been used so far this year, he's going to get a little bit better with some touchdown upside here. So I really, really like that pick. Bouncing it back to me, though, I have not played around to see what else I can do with this lineup in terms of like, if I get this guy, if I get that guy. See, that's the other part that's really hard for me on this show. You can sit there and like look at things and click around because like you're not doing screen share. I have to like produce the show, direct the show, host the show, be part of the talent on the show. And so like there's times that I can get kind of bogged down in the middle of it and not have 2 or 3 picks really lined up. So for me, I think I can get away with paying for something, but I don't want to chance it yet. And I think that there's still enough players out there at other positions that there's, if I can afford it, I can get it later in the flex. So I usually leave my quarterback, tight end, and flex until later. I'm still going to do that now. I kind of feel like I have to go and find a play that's cheap to unlock a little bit of value. It could be somebody like James Washington, who's seen 12 targets over the last 2 games, but like as much as I like James Washington when he was in college, and as much as I've been on the train hoping that he could do stuff in the pros because of things that translate very well from college to the pros that are well within his skill set, I just don't think that he's there. But we've attacked Philadelphia on the outside pretty much for the last 2.5 years. We're still doing it now. Coming off of a game where he got lucky with only 3 targets to get you 9 points when he was priced at 3,500. Anthony Miller is only up to 3,700 now. But if you take the last 3 games, you're looking at 19 targets over 3 weeks. If he gets me 6 to 8 targets this week against Philadelphia, I like the chances for somebody like Anthony Miller to kind of do something that I need to allow me to afford something else that I really want later. So is he a luxury pick? No. Is he a want pick? Definitely not. But is he a pick that can open up a want pick for me later? I definitely think that he's that. And in this format, I think he's maybe a little bit more valuable than even he is in normal head-to-heads to allow you to open up value because he allows me to stall a little bit and allows me to get somebody that I want. Chat just said Devontae Parker at 4,400 is better. He may be, but do I really want that many shares of Miami in a head-to-head game? That's kind of my issue, so I'm going with Anthony Miller here.
I like that call. And yeah, I feel you on being the producer and all of that at the same time, and then still trying to, that's definitely an advantage. I get to kind of mess around with a few more things here. It's a really interesting next pick, because if I go like and lock in a defense, it definitely kind of lets me toy around a little bit more while you're kind of piecing through your last pick. But I think I have a pretty good idea of what your plan is at quarterback. So, but I'm going to kick this back to you. I think
you do, because I sure don't.
Okay, so maybe not. One of the defenses that I think is in a great spot this week that is super cheap, Kansas City 2,200 against Minnesota. Kansas City is the 5th highest adjusted sack rate on the defensive line. We know Minnesota's offensive line is pretty poor. They do run quite a bit. I obviously want pass attempts on the other side of this game, but Kansas City at home at 2,200 seems like a pretty decent way to pay down a defense this week. So I'll go with them.
Kansas City 2,200. Let me go find them real quick. Kansas City. So that whole spiel about them giving up rushing yards didn't bother you?
Yeah, I mean, you already have Dalvin Cook, so I might as well play the other side of it, right?
I know. Well, one of us is going to win that one.
That's what I mean. They're
That's
trying
true.
to leverage in this game, right?
That, hey, there is definite need to kind of do that. So McCaffrey, Jones, Samuel, Williams, Fant, and Chiefs. Your team's looking pretty good so far. This one's going to be close and tough, right? Most of the head-to-head battles have turned out being very, very close and very, very difficult. And they've come down to, like, you know, somebody had a lead and you come back, or it came down to one missed drop pass against Drew Dinkmeyer. I had a bad beat against Levitan in the same fashion, where there was something. So, like, a lot of these games have been close and competitive. There've been like 1 or 2 blowouts, but reasonably speaking, I think that this is another close one that's kind of suiting up. So at tight end, you've already locked one up. I've got a flex. I've got 5,100 left to go. I don't think that I can afford anybody up here. Kelsey, Waller, Henry, even Ertz is kind of a value. But for me, I want to get a little bit of volume. I want to get somebody that I think runs routes. I think that Jack Doyle is certainly in play, but his volume is a little bit capped, and they look to other pieces when they get around the red zone. But at 3,000 with 5 targets, it's kind of like, look, this is what I used to say a few years ago. Do you remember this, Joe? Like, I know that you used to pay attention a couple years ago to the podcast and stuff that we put out. And I was like, look, if I can get a 3K wide receiver that's going to get me 5 catches for 45 yards and the possibility that they might fall into the end zone, that's good enough to be able to afford the other things that I want. Jack Doyle definitely fits that. But Dallas Goedert's playing a lot more snaps on a team that has a more talented quarterback. He definitely has been a little bit touchdown lucky the past couple of weeks, and I'm trying not to be clouded by that. But looks like he's in another great spot, as Chicago will match up with the first option tight end in Zach Ertz, and Goddard becomes somebody who's kind of a forgotten man around the end zone. So give me Goddard at 3,100, giving me 5,766, and I have a defense to push my salary a little bit higher. Cam Brate also a good play. Because Seattle has allowed so many yards and so much efficiency to opposing tight ends, but I just don't think that Tampa Bay utilizes their tight end as much. So kicking it back to you for your next pick. You've got a tight end. You've already locked up your defense.
Yeah, I was with you on I actually thought you were going to go the Cameron Brate route too, and that was kind of my main argument.
Same price range though.
Yeah, no, exact same price, and also like kind of exactly what you just said. This team just doesn't throw their tight end a ton. If people just want to chase the Cameron Brate thing, I think I'm probably going to let other people mess around with that. Higher total game, there's always leverage in having the other side of the chalky game as well. I mean, we expect the Seattle passing game to be extremely popular. So I've left myself with enough flexibility, I think, to jam in my flex spot now. So if a player gets traded, do I have the ability to swap him out at that point?
Yeah. Okay. So what we've gone with is if they're inactive, right?
Okay.
That would be the only way you could swap a player. So if the player gets traded and therefore that makes them inactive on this game, then yes, you can do that. This would probably be the only week that we ever have to deal with that. So
okay.
I'll open that up for you this week so you can pick the team that you want and not have to worry about, am I going to, you know.
There's no like perfect way to do this and like spend like all of your salary, I feel like. So I guess I gave myself a little bit too much room, but kind of nice. So I'm going to go Le'Veon Bell in my flex spot, 7,700. I think that last week was a little bit of an outlier based on him not even getting 10 touches on the ground. But his volume through the air is what I really like this week in particular against Miami. Like I talked about it before with one of my other picks. Miami's the worst team in the entire league at defending running backs in the passing game. The Chargers, 31st in the league at defending running backs in the passing game. So I have two guys in Aaron Jones and Le'Veon Bell that should be extremely active through the air, as well as Christian McCaffrey, of course. And that leaves me the flexibility to pretty much play whatever quarterback I decide to jam in there. But quarterback really doesn't matter anyway, right? So who cares?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, does quarterback actually matter at all ever?
I don't think so.
I mean, there's so many different guys that you can plug in. And typically speaking, in these head-to-heads, in these cage matches, we've been paying up for quarterback because everybody's so worried about it. It's the last position we take. And like, oh, look, we have 6,000-7,000 remaining because we've been so price sensitive to this point. So Le'Veon Bell giving you a lot of volume. If he plays with Aaron Jones and Christian McCaffrey, I think you're well on your way to those 70 touches. I think I'm well on my way to the 70 touches that I want. Let's get over to my team. And I'm going to pick the God for my flex spot. Give me Chris Godwin going up against Seattle. This was kind of a toss-up for me, right? And I still haven't decided that I'm going to go that route. I might go that. There's two guys that are in the same damn price range. Okay.
I'm staring at the other guy right now.
And there is Tyler Lockett's the other guy for me, right? I mean, Tyreek Hill's great. Mike Evans is great. At 7,200, 29 targets the last 2 weeks. I kind of want a piece of this Seattle passing game, and I don't know that. I mean, I think that I can get what I want, and I don't know that I can, I know that I can get any quarterback that I want, but I think that Tyler Lockett has himself a really big day. I kind of want Godwin, but I don't want to take Godwin and then have Evans have another big day. And I don't want to take Evans and watch Godwin have another big day because it just kind of feels like you're chasing the ball around the roulette wheel with both of them. Where with Tyler Lockett, yeah, Metcalf could catch a touchdown, but Lockett against this Tampa Bay secondary,
I'm with you.
I'm going with the one guy. I'm changing it up. Give me Tyler Lockett in this spot. Don't think that there was a running back that I really wanted here. Connor is questionable, may not play. Carson I don't want against Tampa Bay. Josh Jacobs I think is extremely interesting against Detroit, who's given up so many yards on the ground. But yeah, give me Lockett. I'm happy with him. Moving back to you.
Yeah, normally I would say that Lockett just always feels like that guy that's overpriced on DraftKings just relative to his volume, but his ceiling's there. And it kind of, I'm not sure if this was what you were trying to do, but it hedges you a little bit versus my next pick. So might as well just roll out Naked Russ at this point. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's probably the highest equity play on the slate at the quarterback position. Give me a little bit on the ground as well. I did actually have enough salary to get up to DK Metcalf, but obviously didn't think I would earlier. And so I wish I would have built out a few more of these kind of scenarios, but I'll go with Russ at quarterback. I'm leaving a little bit of salary on the table, but could be worse.
It could be. Yeah, you got 4,100. So like here, can you talk about this for a second? Because we talked about Russ Wilson, and that's why I went with, not because of Russ Wilson, but I tend to prioritize, if it comes down to should I get the quarterback or should I get a pass catcher, I tend to prioritize going with the pass catcher because they have the higher ceiling. The quarterbacks are always going to have the higher median projection. We talk about this a lot on showdown slates, but not so much on main slates, right? The wide receivers or the running backs always have a higher ceiling than the quarterbacks because yes, a quarterback can have a 45 or a 50 point day. We've seen Matt Ryan do it, but it takes like 500 yards and 6 touchdowns with one being on the ground. realistically speaking, quarterbacks that have a good day fall between 25 and 35 points. A wide receiver that has a really big day goes all the way up to like 40 to 55 points. So can you talk about that for a couple of seconds, why you went Wilson over Metcalf?
Yeah, so I mean, I think just in general that the range of outcomes is just so much more narrow for the quarterback position. So if you're looking for upside, you almost always should be skewing towards the wide receiver. As Al said, just my strategy overall is to just really spend up at running back, even probably a little bit more drastically than most people. So I don't really end up on guys that often at the higher end of the salary spectrum for wide receiver. It's just one of those positions that is a lot more has a lot more variance tied to it. So since I had already paid down at tight end, I could have just went with Metcalf instead of a guy like Mike Williams in that mid range. But at that point, I wasn't sure I would have the salary to make Russell Wilson work. It's a slate where there's not a ton of like elite running backs anyway, especially if we're doing it like this, where they're just coming off the table. So I agree with you. At that point, I don't know if any of these running backs that were left had the ceiling that someone like even the Tampa Bay guys, but Tyler Lockett in particular have. So I got no issues with that. It kind of hedges you a little bit too if Russ just goes nuts, and hopefully it's just Metcalf and not Lockett.
Fair enough. Getting over to my team, I can take either one. I'm just going to make my last two picks because you've already locked up your quarterback and your defense. So I'm going to make my last two picks here. So I have a quarterback to take. You took Wilson, who I could have paired with Lockett, and taken a really cheap defense. If I take Stafford, that leaves me with 3K. Yeah, I'm all right with that. I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford. They're throwing the ball a lot more in Detroit than I thought that they would this year. Stafford is somebody that I've been high on for the last couple of weeks. I remain high on him this week going against Oakland, who has not done a great job at defending the pass. And he just doesn't have the amount of guys to run the ball on the ground with that they thought that they had at the beginning of the year with Kerryon Johnson out and them getting rid of CJ Anderson. These are more versatile backs and not guys that you can just pound into a line. And Detroit does not do a good job of stopping, in my opinion, what Oakland can bring to the table as well. I don't have the total for this game sitting in front of me. I'm looking for it, but I can't find it. 51 is the total on this game. And as I've always said, team total is the thing that fuels quarterback scoring a little bit more predictively than certain other metrics. So giving Matthew Stafford at 6,800 here. I don't need to pair him with somebody. I don't care who he throws the touchdowns to, whether it's going to be Hawkinson, Jones, Galladay, or any of the other ancillary pieces on this team, leaving me 3K for a defense. Funny, that sounds a little bit familiar. And I'm going to go with the Panthers once again, scoring off at home against Tennessee. They do want to run the ball, does Tennessee. Carolina does have some discrepancies or issues stopping opposing running backs. But if they can get a lead and if they can minimize Henry's usage, I think that forcing this Tennessee team to pass with the pressure rate that the Panthers do get on opposing quarterbacks is a great spot. So that's my final team: Stafford, Chubb, Cook, Watkins, Williams, Miller, Goddard, Lockett, and the Panthers defense. Kicking it back to you, Joe, for your final pick, your final wide receiver at 4,100.
Yeah, so there's I've been kind of going back and forth on this last one. I was thinking about just getting a little bit more correlation and going with someone like Adam Humphries at 3,800. I'm actually going to roll it back with Cole Beasley at 41.
The king!
I think that, yeah, I played Beasley last week actually because of all that wind and I got him at sub 1% as kind of a leverage play.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a guy that's going to see volume. One thing that I do like, I mean, we know Washington is not a great team overall in general, but they're 28th against short passes. So that's something that I'm looking at if there's a big discrepancy, right? So against deep passes, Washington's actually the 11th best team in the league, but against short passes, they're actually 28th. So I think that plays pretty well to Beasley's skill set. More often than not, if I was playing a larger GPP, probably just try and take the correlation with a kind of really close play between Beasley and Humphries, but I'm not going to too condiment. I'm just going to go with Cole Beasley, I guess, this week.
I mean, the king of dust. How can you? He looks thrilled to be on your team too.
He does. He looks very excited.
All right, that's Joe's final pick. That's his squad. Russ Wilson, McCaffrey, Jones, Samuel, Williams, Beasley, Fant, Bell, and the Chiefs defense. Let me know in the comments down below who you think is going to win this week's cage match and those 25 gifted Twitch subs. If you have not seen Joe's stream, go give him a follow on all the social media channels. Just go to Google and type Joe Holka, all one word, and everything will come up and you can drop him a follow on that really easily. He's live just like I am multiple days a week, 5-6 days a week, Joe.
Not quite. I'm going to get there. Got a lot of other stuff going on behind the scenes that you guys will all find about soon. But yeah, the stuff is all going up on YouTube and then streaming multiple times throughout the week as well. So I appreciate you having me on. That was a lot of fun.
Not a problem, man. Thanks for joining. Guys, appreciate you being here. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, make sure you ring that notifications bell because I have a ton of content coming out between NFL and NBA 6 days a week here on this channel. And definitely come by twitch.tv/al_smizzle and join us live, as that's the easiest way for me to get to know you. Much easier than, you know, the YouTube comments section down below. Until the next video, guys, I'll catch you later. Bye.
He's a legend.